Five, four, three, two.
It's good, y'all. Welcome back to Niner Wire. I'm your host, Sam. And first of all, I hope you like that intro video. Got that this week. Shout out to Niner High for that. Make sure to check him out on Twitter. But guys, today we are here because we're going to break down more free agency stuff. We did a lot with free agency last week. We're going to break it down more because obviously more stuff's been happening. That simple. And for this stream, I have a guest who I've wanted to have on this channel for a long time. Please welcome Nick right here. Nick, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good. And first, I just want to say that was an excellent introduction. I got to get me one of those. That was awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out to Niner Hive, guys. He makes great intros, so make sure to check that out. So I really like that. I really appreciate that. But yeah, glad you're doing all right. Glad to have you on tonight. But guys, again, we're going to be talking about all the free agency stuff that is broken down. We did a video last Tuesday with Joel. It's Wednesday now, so we're going to be breaking down everything that happened after that video until now. And we'll talk about the Ebukam signing maybe a little bit as well. So let's just get right into it. But before we do, make sure to follow me on Twitter at NinerWireSam. My Instagram's at NinerWire_YT. If you're watching on Twitter, make sure to subscribe to NinerWire on YouTube. I post a lot of stuff on all those platforms, so make sure to check those all out. Also, another place you can find me, Talking Niners podcast with me and Kobe, who's been on a few of my streams. Nick was on a stream about maybe like a month ago, something like that. I don't really know. But follow us on Twitter at Talking Niners Pod. And Nick, how about this is your first time on the channel? Tell the people where they can find you at.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, Sam, thank you so much for having me on.
Hey, man.
Find me on Twitter. Find me on Twitter at NinerNick_22. I produce content on the All 49ers Sports Illustrated channel with Grant Cohn and Jose Sanchez. I have my own podcast, The Faithful Fanatic, available on all major podcast platforms. That's enough about me. I'm ready to jump right into this. I'm excited. I'm so excited to talk about everything that's happened over the last week, really, because as a 49er fan, you got to be excited with what's gone down over the last 7 days, the last 7 days.
Exactly. I mean, it's been crazy. And guys, before we get into it, if you're not following Nick, what are you doing? So go do that right now. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, make sure to leave them in the chat below. Let's get right into it without further ado. All right. So let's just start with, I say we start with the biggest signing of this past week. Trent Williams did it at like 12:30 in the morning. Something like that. Not that many people were up. I'm obviously on the West Coast. So, yeah, Trent Williams. I mean, Nick, I spoke about him a lot. I want to hear it from you first. What's your take on Trent Williams signing with the 49ers or re-signing with them?
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. The contract is kind of separate than what I'm going to talk about. It was important to lock up Trent Williams and solidify the left tackle position. And it's a position the 49ers haven't had to worry about for 13, 14, 15 years because you had Joe Staley for all those years. Then you have Trent Williams sliding right in. And what I really, really find important about Trent Williams coming back is you don't have a gaping hole at left tackle. Because if that were the case, it kind of mitigates your options at the draft. You'd have to go left tackle with the first round pick. And now that you don't have to do that, your options are wide open. So that's something I find really, really important. Left tackle is a premium position in the NFL, and you just can't move forward without having one. It needs to be addressed right away. So I'm happy that the 49ers were able to lock up Trent Williams, make him the highest paid offensive lineman in NFL history, just because they now can go any direction in the draft.
Yeah, man, you hit the nail on the head right there. I think signing him just for the draft is so important because, I mean, as you said, quarterback, you want to get that quarterback round one for the 49ers. If you didn't re-sign Trent Williams, you would have to go probably left tackle round one, maybe left tackle round two, but the left tackles round two aren't as good as the ones round one, or you would have to sign a cheaper option like Alejandro Villanueva, probably the best one out there. Russell Okung, not the best. And Eric Fisher is coming off a torn Achilles, so he's probably not going to play this year. So you get Trent Williams back. First of all, it's important for the draft. Second of all, it's important for your offensive line and your team in general. He is if not the best player on the 49ers, in my opinion. I mean, he's one of the best, if not the best left tackle in football. And you're bringing him to this team, bringing him back. Yes, you pay him the most money for a left tackle ever, but it is worth all that money, in my opinion. Definitely a guy who you need to have back, protecting the blind side, especially when you have a quarterback controversy going on right now with Garoppolo. Who's going to be the starter next year? Would it be a rookie? You need to have a left tackle secure, because then really anyone can really fit into that system. A lot of people can do that. So yeah, man, it's so good to have him back. It's really just, it's not like a luxury player, but you got to fill in those trenches. You know that John Lynch loves to do that. So Trent Williams, I'm really glad to have him back on this football team.
Agreed.
For sure. Speaking of trenches, this is a guy who's more in the trenches that I'll start this one off. I did not think we were going to get this guy and Trent Williams on this team. That is Alex Mack. He got paid, I think it's like 5.5 a year for 3 years, something like that. I don't know. Is that correct?
3-year deal. I forget the dollar amount over the course of 3 years, but I know it's 3 years, and I remember it being in the ballpark of $5 million a year.
Yeah, man, $5 million a year for a center, one of the best centers in football, one of the best centers available in free agency, and you bring him to this team to fill a need, which I said that Ben Garland could be the starting center. The reason being because we needed to pay Trent Williams. And I did not think we were going to get those two. And we end up getting Alex Mack on a fantastic contract, in my opinion. This is a signing that, Kyle Shanahan loves his centers. He brought in Weston Richburg for, at the time, a lot of people said that was a lot of money. And now you're bringing Alex Mack. It's for, significantly less money considering their play style and their caliber of a player as well. But you bring him in, lock up the offensive line. You get this one of the biggest offensive line needs off the team. Bang, bang, overnight. Right there with Trent Williams, Alex Mack. Right guard is probably our weakest spot right now, but getting a center to help the right guard is crucial. And that's why I now think you're probably in the draft, you're probably avoiding a guy like Rashawn Slater. Even though I love Rashawn Slater, I do believe he would fit well for this team in at right guard. You don't necessarily need him. You could go cornerback round 1. You could go quarterback round 1. You could even draft an edge and trade back or do something like that. It gives you so much more flexibility in the draft. So having those two guys locked up, Trent Williams and Alex Mack, just provides so much flexibility for this team. It's so crucial how we brought both of those guys for under 30 million, which is ridiculous in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
That is fantastic for this team. I've spoken enough on Alex Mack. Nick, what you got to say?
Well, I want to go back to something that you brought up about who could potentially fill in that center spot before Alex Mack was signed. I think Ben Garland is an excellent offensive lineman, and he's another player that the 49ers brought back for a second consecutive year. He was scheduled to hit the market last free agency. They brought him back. Of course, he battled injuries this past season, but I think he is a great depth piece on the offensive line, and Alex Mack is a huge get. I just looked up the numbers, and I want to shout out Charlie. I saw he just dropped a comment. I see Charlie commenting on my stuff on Twitter quite a bit. The numbers I saw were the 3 years, $14.85 million, so right around that $5 million range that we were talking about. But the reason why I really like the Mack signing is, and I tweeted this out, just having a center that's been around the block, has the big game experience. Alex Mack, he was the all-decade center of the 2010s. Being able to bring him in and bring that leadership on the offensive line, being able to hold his peers accountable, that is going to be so important. And it reminds me of when the 49ers brought in Jonathan Goodwin, the longtime center for the Saints, when Jim Harbaugh first came over in 2011. And he really helped the young offensive line get going. This 49ers group isn't as young as that 49ers offensive line group was in 2011 with guys like Mikey Potty and Anthony Davis, who were really young in their NFL careers at the time. This is a more experienced group, I'd say, with Laken Tomlinson, Trent Williams, Mike McGlinchey's now going into his 4th year. So this Mack signing, I just love having that veteran presence in the center, literally the center of the offensive line, playing that center position, a guy who can communicate well to his teammates, change whatever blocks need to be changed pre-snap. That is a huge get for the 49ers, and I'm really looking forward to the leadership and the communication that he's going to bring, even though he's getting up there in age. If I remember correctly, he's going to be 36, or maybe he's already 36. If I remember, 36 in November. So he's definitely towards the tail end of his career. I don't know if he's going to play out that entire 3-year contract, but regardless, this is a huge signing that's going to have a huge influence on the 2021 season.
Absolutely. And I want to bring up one point that you talked about a little bit, communication. That is something where you saw multiple reports last year saying that the 49ers offensive line could not communicate with this quarterback. That could have been a center problem. That could have been a quarterback problem. Either way, it's a problem. Now you bring in a guy who has been a respected veteran throughout his entire NFL career and a very lengthy one as well. So you bring in a guy who knows what he's doing. He knows how to communicate with the quarterback. He knows how to communicate with the offensive line. He was a captain in Atlanta. So he knows what he's doing with communication. You bring that communication aspect in, this offensive line gets even better than it was before. And yes, it is definitely sad to see Weston Richburg go. It's definitely sad with that injury, that patellar tear, for that to happen. But Alex Mack, in my opinion, is an upgrade over Weston Richburg. I know there's age, but a 3-year deal for a 36-year-old. I mean, yes, he's probably on his last limbs right there, but he's been able to stay durable throughout this. And Callie brought up a good point. 35 years old last year, 1 sack. That's phenomenal. That is absolutely phenomenal for any offensive lineman of any age. And when you're doing it at 35 years old or 34 years old, however many years he is right now, that's phenomenal. So overall, I love this signing. I mean, A+ for me easily on that signing, and the Trent Williams signing as well. I just had to say, I mean, the fact that we got both of those guys is insane to me. I never thought that would happen.
Agreed. And here we are.
For sure. Exactly. Here we are. We got this offensive line locked up. Let's move on to the secondary a little bit. We made 2 moves in the past few days. One, I believe, was today, early in the morning. One was yesterday. Let's start with, do you want to start with K'Waun Williams or Jaquiski Tartt, Nick?
Either or. I'm fine. I'm stoked to talk about either one.
For sure. All right, let's start with the one that happened today. K'Waun Williams. K'Waun Williams, obviously the nickelback for this team, one of the leaders in this secondary. We bring him back on a 1-year deal. The money has not been announced yet, but I assume, considering that we've been clearing up a lot of cap, I don't know how big it is or how small it is. I would assume it's kind of in the Verrett range for money, $5.5 million a year. I mean, nickelback isn't as valuable as like a cornerback 1 or a cornerback 2, something that you would lock up those big receivers, but it's still a valuable position, especially for the 49ers with K'Waun Williams. In my opinion, K'Waun Williams is a guy who, even though he is a phenomenal guy in our secondary, he could have been replaceable, but I'm more than happy to bring him back. He was the best option out there, and we had the money to get him, so it's that simple. You go and get him. He's been a crucial part to this team, as I've been saying, and you bring him back on a 1-year deal. But one thing that I was kind of concerned about with the secondary, with bringing K'Waun back, with bringing Tartt back, with bringing Verrett back, they're all in 1-year deals. So you're going to have this problem again next year where your secondary is going to be fairly depleted in free agency. I don't know if that's a money thing. Maybe they're trying to clear up cap for this year, maybe go all in and get their quarterback or something like that. But they definitely have a plan up their mind, considering they're giving everyone 1-year deals besides Emmanuel Moseley, which is kind of surprising. He's the only one that gets the 2-year deal, but they definitely have something up their sleeves. So I definitely think it's important to see what happens with the secondary. And maybe you'll bring a guy in the draft who you'll lock up for 4 years, 5 years, depending on where you draft him. But overall, I'd give this deal an A for that reason. So yeah, Nick, what you got to say about K'Waun Williams?
My rankings as far as who the 49ers should prioritize with their in-house free agents, I had K'Waun Williams right up there in that 2-3 range behind Trent Williams, and more so of a priority to bring back than Jason Verrett. Of course, this past year, Williams battled a handful of injuries. He played half the season, and that was uncharacteristic for him in comparison to previous seasons. He's never played a full 16-game season, but he's always been in that 13, 14, 15 game range. And the reason why I had K'Waun Williams prioritized over Jason Verrett personally is because, of course, Verrett was able to overcome he was able to overcome his previous injury history this past season, put together a pretty full year, but there's still that concern there. Can he continue to stay healthy over a 16-game season? I have more confidence in K'Waun Williams to do that than Verrett. But getting more to the on-the-field stuff, going back to 2019, K'Waun Williams was the best playmaker on the 49ers defense. The best.
Easily.
Oh, I should say in the secondary, be a little more specific there, because you got the factor in Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. But in the secondary, if you want to talk about a guy generating turnovers via forced fumbles, interceptions, getting sacks, K'Waun Williams was flying all over the field. And I get the argument that he could have easily been replaced maybe in the draft, grabbing a guy like Elijah Molden. But what K'Waun Williams, the slot market in general, it's just, there's not a lot of hype there for whatever reason. Even Quentin Dunbar, who was looked at as the best slot cornerback in the game. The Seahawks traded for him for a 5th round, 6th round pick. So you can see it right. And that was before all the legal stuff even came out, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that was like in March.
Yeah, beforehand. So I kind of saw this happening, and I thought K'Waun Williams lost himself some money just by not being able to stay on the field this past year because he had so much momentum. He had so much momentum going for himself from 2019 transitioning into 2020. And in that contract year, he just had a lot of unfortunate things go his way where he wasn't able to stay healthy for one. And then he had that suspension that was issued to him that was later revoked because I guess he tested for PEDS, but it was like a false positive. I don't remember
I forgot about that.
All of the logistics. So I kind of thought around the mid-November, early December range, like, okay, K'Waun Williams' market's not going to be as hot as maybe others are thinking. So I'm stoked that the 49ers were able to bring him back. And I don't know if it's going to be as high as the Verrett contract. I can see it kind of more being in the $3.5–4 million range. And one thing about these one-year deals, all we can do is just kind of hope that the 2022 salary cap, because of the new TV deals, just skyrockets. And because there's not a set number right now, maybe the 49ers are kind of playing it more cautiously with these guys who at first they didn't think they were going to be able to bring back, and now they are able to bring back. So I'm sure they'll reevaluate how things look next year. But you're right, they are going to be in a very similar position where, oh, great, we had Verrett and K'Waun Williams and Tart all come back on these one-year deals. Now we got to kind of go through this again.
Yeah, I actually didn't really think about the injuries about those one-year deals. Verrett, I definitely thought about the injury. That's where you bring him back on a one-year deal. That was the move. Tart for the one-year deal, I can understand. K1, I kind of forgot about those injuries. And I mean, I did not notice that he hadn't played 60 games in the year. That is definitely interesting to see from K'Waun Williams because he's a guy you see on the field a lot making an impact. Sometimes you don't notice him at times because the nickel, I feel like the nickelback is a position that is a slow, not like just like a sneaky position that will just bite you at any time, something like that. You really focus on guys like Richard Sherman, Emmanuel Mosley. So it definitely makes sense to give the one-year deals. And yes, they're definitely playing more cautiously, in my opinion. I definitely think that the Niners are re-signing more guys than I thought they would. Well, personally, I thought they would. They thought they're re-signing more guys than they thought they would. I did not think we got the 6 most key free agents that we had on our team back for fantastic contracts, plus Ebukam, plus Alex Mack, and plus more depth pieces. That's absolutely absurd, in my opinion. So
no, you're 100% right. I don't think anybody really saw the 49ers being able to bring back as many players as they brought back. It's just really things have broke their way exceptionally well this offseason. They just got to keep going for it and make the most of it. And it's getting very similar to how I felt last offseason where you just push all your eggs into this basket right now. And that's another reason why, if we get into quarterback stuff, I'm just going to get on this tirade. But what I'm kind of thinking is, how comfortable could you be plugging in a rookie quarterback right now and kind of pulling Garoppolo out of the starting lineup when you have all this in place right now? It makes I'm tempted to run it back with Garoppolo, but at the same, and maybe draft for impact with the 12th overall pick. But at the same time, this is the time to get a franchise quarterback. Anyway, that's a whole separate thing. I want to make sure that I'm not going off track with your show here. So I know you're good. We're talking cornerbacks right now, not quarterbacks.
Exactly, man. But go off, do your thing. It's all good. But yeah, that's what we do here. We just go off, talk about the 49ers. Wow. Love it, man. That's what we do. But yeah, man, it's crazy how we've just got everyone back. And as Rolls Royce says right here, Parag the God. It's that simple. Parag Marathe. I don't know how to pronounce that. Is it Marathe or Marath? I don't even know at this point.
I say it the way that you said it the first time. But
Marathe. There you go. But Parag, he's just been doing such a phenomenal job with this 49ers team and just getting all these guys back. So, I've been shouting him out every video that I've been saying for that I've been doing since free agency starting. But once again, shout out to Parag Marathe for everything he's done. It's crazy, but yeah, man. K'Waun Williams is a guy. I said I would give it an A. You could give it an A+ as well. It's so close. You could really just give this offseason the whole A+ and just call it a day. There's been some. What was the one set? You probably saw this, Nick. There was one set that gave the Trent Williams signing an F.
Yeah. So that's the way I interpreted that, it was from Over the Cap, and they gave, I know they it was Kyle Juszczyk they featured, it was Trent Williams, and there was one other player that
Verrett.
I'm on. Was it Verrett?
It was Verrett, I'm pretty sure.
So I'm not a cap guru by any stretch of the imagination, and it's something that Over the Cap kind of specializes in. So when I first saw that, I didn't take it as they're giving the 49ers these grades for bringing their players back. It was more so about the contracts that they issued out, because if you look closely, I mean, Trent Williams is going to be playing, his contract lasts till he's 39 or whatever it is. And if they decide to cut him early, there's going to be that dead cap. So that's the stuff that Over the Cap's looking at, I'm sure. And they're really trying to dig into, okay, was this a good signing to pay a late 30s offensive tackle this much money because you're committed yourself to him for that long? That's how they see it. But I'm sure if you were to ask them, was it important for the 49ers to get back Trent Williams, the grade they give to that answer is a lot different than how their website feels about giving a 33-year-old left tackle just record-breaking money in a 6-year deal.
Yeah, for sure. And before we move on, do you have anything else to say about K'Waun Williams before we move on?
Shark season's back. That's all I got.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect. And before we move on, I know we're not talking about restructures in this video, but I want to bring up Charlie's comment right here. The Dee Ford restructure is going really under the rug right now. And I think that is so important. You had like 11 million cap. Now you're at 20 million cap. And on top of that, I heard there were some reports that he actually could play this season for the 49ers. I don't know if that's true or not, because I think we brought in Ebukam to replace him. So I don't know if that's happening, but just imagine Dee Ford on that offense line with Ebukam backing him up. That would be absolutely absurd. I mean, I can just dream about that. That would be insane, to say the least. So
yeah, with the Dee Ford restructure, he just did the team a solid. It wasn't he didn't have to do the team that solid and restructure his contract. He could have been greedy and taken the money that he was owed, the money that they agreed to extend him with when they traded for him from the Chiefs. So the fact that he was able to help the team out, I'm pulling for Dee Ford. The 49ers are a much better defense when he's able to stay on the field, and his speed just completely unlocks the things that they're capable of on the defensive side. So it would be a huge bonus. The way I see Dee Ford is the same way I see Jalen Hurd, is that if they contribute in any way, shape, or form this upcoming season or anywhere down the road, really, it's just a huge bonus.
Absolutely. And I mean, Dee Ford, I was saying in 2019, he was the X factor to this defense, because when he was on the field, this defensive line was so much better. And I mean, it could be the same in 2021 if he plays. We'll have to see how that plays out. So yeah, that's all I got to say on Dee Ford. You got anything else? Perfect. All right, let's move on to the other secondary piece that we re-signed. That is Jaquiski Tartt, who we brought back yesterday, again on a 1-year deal. The money has not been announced for that as well, I believe. I would assume it's probably in the Verrett range, maybe a bit less, kind of near K'Waun Williams' money. This is a guy who has had injury history in the past. The safety market was pretty strong this year, so I think people were trying to. I mean, maybe people were trying. I don't really know how much money it is. We'll just have to wait. But I'm really glad to have him back. And yes, Jaquiski Tartt was a guy who was replaceable for the 49ers. But in my opinion, out of all the safeties available, Tartt was the best one available for the 49ers, not only because he was returning to this team, but it was because he was the best one out there. And you get him, you bring him back to this team, you bring in that leadership, which goes really under the rug, and you bring in a guy who, again, another guy who goes under the rug more again. So I mean, Jaquiski Tartt is a fantastic player to this team, very underrated. And yes, there are injuries with him. Yes, we all know. But you have Tarvarius Moore in the backup, and I do think Tarvarius Moore is a solid backup. This is a guy who the Niners wanted starting in 2019. They used the 3rd-round pick on him. And yes, Robert Saleh is no longer there, but I definitely think they had the same intentions with Tarvarius Moore to be a solid backup, maybe a starter one day. He is in a contract year, so we'll have to see how that pans out. But overall, I like this signing. Maybe giving a guy a multi-year deal who's not in the Niners, but you can't go wrong with giving Jaquiski Tartt 1-year deal, bring him back to this team.
No, not at all. And I've been a little hard on Jaquiski Tartt and Jimmy Ward in the past for not generating the turnovers as some as the other safety duos in the NFL. You know, Tartt's been around for a while, only has 4 career interceptions, but the one he had against the Panthers, that was the best interception I've ever seen. Like, in person.
Oh my God, I was at that game. That was insane.
Yeah. It was an insane interception. And the forced fumble, the strip that he had on DK Metcalf, was the best forced fumble strip recovery I ever seen in the game. So Jaquiski Tartt, even though he doesn't have the crazy interception and forced fumble turnovers, he only has 2 forced fumbles in his career. As shocking as that is, for as much of a thumper as he is, he really truly has the best interception I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes at a live game, as well as the best strip and fumble recovery. And, despite their ability or their inability to consistently generate a lot of turnovers, I'm very comfortable with Tart going back there with Jimmy Ward because they're interchangeable and you're very comfortable with those 2 guys. They're very safe and very sound football players, whereas when Tarvarius Moore is in the game and when Marcel Harris is in the game, you kind of feel uneasy a little bit. We've seen times where Tarvarius Moore has taken an incorrect angle trying to make a tackle or was late bringing up pass, whatever the case may be. And Marcel Harris, if you remember that Saints game when the team was just getting torched by Jared Cook in 2019, the game where George Kittle famously had his face mask.
Grab.
Yeah, exactly. So you just feel a lot more comfortable with Jaquiski Tartt back there with Jimmy Ward. And I really like this signing because, again, it's very important to have continuity on defense and have chemistry already in place. And when you have a first-year defensive coordinator in DeMeco Ryans, the more players that you bring back, the easier that transition is going to be for him because he doesn't have to go out of his way to get Tarvarius Moore up to that next level to be a starting caliber safety or to step right in for Jimmy Ward. If Jimmy Ward were to move to that in the box role where I thought he was really, really good last year when Jaquiski Tartt was out. So the more players that you're able to bring back, especially the more starters, it's that much easier for DeMeco Ryans. And that's a part of this that I feel like is not being talked about enough, is that you have a brand new defensive coordinator and yet you're able to retain all of these starters that really nobody thought that you were going to be able to bring back. I thought Tartt was as good as gone as Richard Sherman. And now you hear rumblings, will Richard Sherman come back to the Niners? Is he going to go to the Seahawks? I think the Seahawks is where he'll end up. But it's so crazy to me that the 49ers are sitting here not just with K'Waun Williams coming back and Jaquiski Tartt and Verrett's back. And I always thought Mosley would come back because he was a restricted free agent. And if you want to get into the defensive line stuff, DJ Jones is another guy that I thought there's no way they're going to bring him back because he being DJ Jones tweeted in January, know your worth or something like that with the money emoji. So of course, being the spectator that I am, I kind of took that as, is he talking about his new contract possibly? Are they not offering him enough? Does he feel like he's worth more than whatever it is he's being? It couldn't even have had anything to do with that. Who knows? It could have just been someone simply tweeting, know your worth. But DJ Jones is another guy. I thought he's gone. He's a good 3 tech. He's a nice nose tackle. He's a great guy to have on your defensive line.
Favorite guy, one of my favorite players on this team.
And he's back as well. It's like, how did they pull this off? You look at, okay, well, maybe they were in a pretty good position cap space wise. They had the 11th, 12th most cap space, whatever it was, going into free agency. And then these other teams made them it was just like a perfect storm. That's the only way.
Exactly.
It was a perfect storm that here you go. All these players that you thought you were losing, there you could have your continuity back, your starters back, make life for DeMeco Ryans as easy as possible.
Perfect. Yeah, DJ Jones, let's talk about him a little bit too. DJ Jones is a guy who I think if you know me on Twitter, you know that I love DJ Jones for I don't even know why, just for some reason. I just love that big guy just messing up that defensive line. What I've always been dreaming of? A DJ Jones pick 6. I've always just wanted to see that. Well, that would be the best thing to watch.
Hey, he's a big guy, and there's something about seeing a guy that he's not super tall. He's 6'1"-ish. He's but he's a big guy. Big guy. He's got his boiler. You know what I mean? He's a guy that you just love to see guys that big move at the rate that he runs. It's so impressive.
It's crazy.
His quick twitch, excuse me. DJ Jones is the man. So again, a great signing from being able to bring back DJ Jones. And there's another, while we're talking about the defensive line, Zach Kerr, the guy at the 49ers just brought over from the Carolina Panthers. I think he's going to be an extraordinary addition to the defensive line. He was coming off a career year, even though he's, I think he's 30. He might be exactly 30.
He's something like that. I don't know too much about him. I don't watch Panthers games, but you probably know a lot about him. So continue what you were saying right there.
Oh, no, I was just talking about how The guy Kerr that's coming over from the Panthers, I think he's going to be one of those signings that goes very under the radar, and he could end up
like kind of like Kerry Hyder, the next Kerry Hyder for this team.
I'm not studying that 8.5 sack expectation, but definitely a guy you're like, whoa, where'd he come from? And he signed for that cheap, and he's contributing that heavily. So that's a name to keep your eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. Zach Kerr. I said I don't really know much about him. It's again defensive line depth. You've lost guys like Kerry Hyder, like Solomon Thomas. Ronald Blair's probably going to be done. His career could be over. I don't know where he's moving on. We'll have to see what happens with that. But yeah, Zach Kerr, a great depth piece from what I've heard. I haven't been able to watch any film on him. I don't watch many Panthers games, so I'll have to get used to him a little bit. But he is a guy who, I mean, I don't really know too much about him, but he seems like a great guy for this team. So, yeah. And also adding on to the defensive line, we brought another defensive lineman back. I believe it was might have been today. I forget when. I mean, I'm kind of just losing track of days because this
it was yesterday. It was yesterday. If you're thinking about who I'm thinking about,
Jordan Willis. Yeah. So Jordan Willis, this is a guy who we have the Jets 7th round pick because of Jordan Willis. So he is a guy who, in my opinion, went again under the radar last year. Pretty solid depth piece for this team, especially with all the injuries coming in. I think he had like 1 or 2 sacks, which doesn't seem good on paper. He doesn't really stand out on paper, but he definitely provided that presence that you needed off the edge, kind of like a speed rusher guy, a bit more of that. So I'm glad to have him back. Also makes our 6th round pick next year, which we don't have because of him, a bit more sweet because we bring back Jordan Willis. So I like this signing a lot, bringing him back. This is a guy who I really wanted to have back. I didn't know if we were going to have him back because, I mean, depth pieces are always rotating in and out of the team. So I'm really glad to have Jordan Willis back. I think this is another solid depth piece, but you add 2 depth pieces. Well, you keep Zach Kerr, you keep DJ Jones, and you keep Jordan Willis, you keep DJ Jones, you bring in Zach Kerr. Those are 3 depth pieces I think you want to have on this 49ers team. And yes, there's some more work to do. I personally believe that Ziggy Ansah would be a phenomenal guy to bring back for this team, even though he's coming off the torn bicep, but he did so well with Kusarek in Detroit. We didn't get to see him in SF. I think that would be a very under the radar signing as well. And we'll talk about him a bit later. But so far, this defensive line looking really good.
Yeah.
As always.
Yeah. And I'm exceptionally high on Kevin Givens. I think Kevin Givens.
That too.
If I had him penciled in to start at the nose tackle, the 3 tech, if DJ Jones were to move on, which I was convinced he was going to. Again, great to have DJ Jones back. But Kevin Givens, I read an article from Matt Mayoker. There was something on NBC Sports Bay Area where Jones said, don't be surprised if Kevin Givens is the next player to really break out because he's working for it. And I like Ziggy Ansah, Dion Jordan, Jordan Willis, Dion Jordan. Those were 2 guys I thought in their roles were really, really good last year. And Dion Jordan had his moments, especially in that Bills game where there wasn't much going for the 49ers on either side of the ball. But back to Jordan Willis, I really like him. He's a super athletic guy, and having him as just a complimentary pass rusher that plays at 12 snaps a game, if that, and just having his speed, being able to come off the edge. He had 2.5 sacks in 7 games with the 49ers, I believe it was. So you do the math, that's a 5-sack season over the course of a 16-game season.
Yeah, man. I mean, and another thing with Kevin Givens, DJ Jones, another guy who has dealt with injuries these past few years. And I mean, Kevin Givens is a guy who I really liked to see last year. I thought he could be starting, which is I was fine with DJ Jones leaving. Obviously, I'm very happy to bring DJ Jones back, but Kevin Givens is going to have a phenomenal role on this team this year as well. Same with Contavious Street. Those 2 guys were 2 guys kind of under the radar for this team that really had decent seasons last year because all the injuries on that defensive line. Those 2 stepped up in a big way, and I definitely think they're going to do it again. So overall, this defensive line depth has looked phenomenal so far.
Yep.
For sure. All right. Last guy that we brought in, Dante Johnson. Nick, I'm going to let you say your part on this. If you guys want to hear what I have to say on this, just watch my Bills post-game stream. Yeah, just go ahead, Nick.
Dante Johnson? Like, oh, gosh. I'm trying to he had some moments last year where I was like, wow, did Dante Johnson really just do that? I think he had a nice pass breakup, and he's always on the roster. Where does
I know
he just keeps coming back? He
must have some. John Lynch and him must have something going on between the 2.
I can't believe it, but give him credit. He's carved out a nice career for himself, and I I want to say he wasn't responsible for the blocked punt week 1, but he was definitely in as one of the protectors for Mitch Wishnowsky when that punt got blocked. So I was like, oh, there's Dante Johnson again, and he even may have was he the cornerback against the Eagles? Do you remember the Travis Fulgham touchdown?
No, that might have been Withers. I don't know. I kind of like erased that game from my mind.
But anyway, Dante Johnson, you go ahead because I'm keeping it positive tonight. There's a lot to be happy. So shout out Dante Johnson for getting like his 100th contract with the team.
I know, man. Dante Johnson. I mean, you guys can watch my Bills post game stream. I went on a rant. It's kind of not safe for work because I was pretty upset at Dante Johnson for doing Dante Johnson things. It's the most 49er signing of all time. We bring it back every year. I'll try to stay positive for this. I don't want to go too hard in, but as Dom says right here, Dante Johnson, just put him in the doghouse. I mean, what is he doing? It doesn't make sense at all for me. So Dante Johnson right there. You got anything else to say? Or go ahead.
No, that's it. All right, Dante Johnson.
Perfect. All right. You got anything else you want to say about the guys that we brought back or we signed this offseason so far?
No, I think we nailed that. We didn't talk too much about Samson Ebukam. I don't know if you talked about him on your previous show or not.
Yeah, I talked about him on my previous show, but how about you talk about him here too?
Okay, I would love to. So at first, my initial reaction, like my very first initial reaction to the signing was like, really? This is our first free agent signing is Samson Ebukam. That was my initial thought because we knew that getting a speed rusher, an edge rusher was a need for the 49ers. And when guys like Carl Lawson and Bud Dupree and all of the other talent that was available, Yannick Ngakoue, there were so many players at the edge position that you're like, wow, this is who the 49ers should go after. And then as the day progressed, you're kind of like, wow, these guys are signing massive contracts. Carl Lawson's getting $15-16 million from the Jets. Romeo Okwara goes back to the Lions for $13-14 million, whatever it was. Like, it became clear to me the Niners were never players to get an edge rusher like that. They were just too costly. So when I thought about that, I was like, okay, I'm big on the signing. And then I thought about Shaq Barrett and how Shaq Barrett kind of was behind, not that Samson Ebukam was behind a lot of talent on the Rams because he got a good amount of run, but Shaq Barrett being behind Marcus Ware and Von Miller, he just kind of patiently waited for his turn, and their numbers are extremely, extremely similar their first 4 years in the league. We're talking sack numbers, we're talking pressures, quarterback hits, pressures generated per snap. There was a little bit of an edge given to Shaq Barrett. And but besides that, if you look how Ebukam tested at his pro day, because he wasn't invited to the NFL Combine, based on the research that I've done, I wasn't able to find his Combine numbers anywhere, but he ran faster than Cooper Kupp and Kendrick Bourne at Eastern Washington's pro day. And he's just a freak athlete and he wasn't blitzed a lot. He only blitzed 29 times, I believe the exact number is. I wrote an article about Samson Ebukam as soon as the signing went down. He blitzed 29 times, and he had 4.5 sacks, which was also Shaq Barrett was in that range as well. He never broke 5 sacks when he was with the Broncos those first 4 years. And then he goes to a place, the Buccaneers, where he's given more of an opportunity, and look what he's become. So I'm not saying, of course, that Ebukam's going to turn into Shaq Barrett. But when you look at the positions that they were in the first 4 years in the NFL career and how the free agency things kind of panned out, how they tested athletically, I think this can be a phenomenal signing. And again, just knowing Ebukam, having a friend that's a Rams fan that's never been high on him, I was like, eh. But then as the time goes on and you see these other guys signing these massive contracts, it was a quality signing for the 49ers. It really was.
Yeah, and I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there. This is a guy who I kind of threw out as just a name, maybe a Kerry Hyder replacement. He's going to be the D Ford guy, it seems like. Could have gone a bit more high profile. And I like the Shaq Barrett comparison a lot, too. So you hit the nail on the head right there, Nick. So, yeah, for sure. All right, I know you got to roll. So before you do that, how about you talk about – or what were you going to say?
I think I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay on time right now. So
is there a cutoff time for you right now? Or just want to know?
I could probably go till 8:30.
Okay, perfect. All right, we'll do that then. So let's move on to the guys who we did not re-sign and who left in free agency. So I believe there's been 4 since the video that I made earlier. We had Witherspoon and Kendrick Bourne gone before. But here, let's start with the guys who have came back. Who left after that video. So let's start with one that happened. Let's talk. We've been talking a lot about defensive line. So let's start with that. We have 2 guys that left, Kerry Hyder and Solomon Thomas. And let's start with Kerry Hyder. Nick, what you got to say about Kerry Hyder leaving?
I really, really like Kerry Hyder. Would I be comfortable giving him a 3-year deal? Or if I think someone tweeted out that it's really a 2-year deal, and that third year is voidable for the Seahawks.
It's 2 years, $6.5 million. The third year is $10 million, and that's all voidable.
Yeah, that's a pretty safe contract for the Seahawks, especially if that third year they can get out of with no penalty, which it sounds like the case is. So you take it as a 2-year, $6.5 million deal. That's a pretty good deal for the Seahawks, knowing what I know about Kerry Hyder. Yes, he's battled a lot of injuries, but he was great. How good was he last year? He was probably the best defensive lineman. I'd say he was the best defensive lineman with Nick Bosa going down in week 2. He really stepped up to the occasion. He was even good that first week when Bosa was healthy against the Cardinals. So from start to finish, Kerry Hyder had a phenomenal season. And there's probably a lot of teams that were wary of his injury history, which is why he didn't get more. Because very rarely do guys get 8.5 sacks and then sign for a contract that small. And of course, it looks bigger than what it actually is because you look at that voidable $10 million a year they have in year 3. But he'll be missed on the 49ers defensive line. You always need a high motor guy, and Kerry Hyder, best of luck on the Seahawks. It seems just so fitting that he's going to continue to be a great player on the Seahawks because, every player that goes to the Seahawks from the 49ers continues to do well, in my opinion. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the injury point's a good point for why Kerry Hyder didn't make the money that most people would after an 8.5 sack season. Yeah. I think the main reason why he didn't make that money is because you look at what he's done with Chris Kruserk and without Chris Kruserk, our defensive line coach. With Chris Kruserk, he has 16.5 sacks. Without him, he has a total of 2. Mm-hmm. That is definitely eye-popping, and that is a concern for any team that wants to sign him, in my opinion. Yep. I like the deal that Seattle gave him. It's a low-risk, high-reward deal, in my opinion. But overall, I wouldn't say I can't say I'm worried. I can't say I'm worried. I can't say I'm not worried. I'm kind of in the middle at this point. Again, Nick, as you said, a lot of guys who have who's gone from the Niners to the Seahawks have turned out well. DJ Reed being the prime example was, in my opinion, not that great here. Now he's doing really well with Seattle, and I'm definitely more concerned about the Ahkello Witherspoon signing for them than I am with the Kerry Hyder signing. Oh, yeah. But yeah, I definitely think this could hurt us a little bit. The fact that he signed in the division also definitely hurts the Niners. You get that intel from other players, so. Yeah, overall, I'm not too concerned. This is a guy who I thought was going to leave. I thought would get a bit more overpaid. It's a fantastic job by the Seahawks to do that, give him a contract like that. I thought the team would pay him higher. But overall, I like the deal for the Seahawks. I didn't think he was going to come back. Plus, I would take Ebukam over Kerry Hyder simply because of the higher ceiling right there. Yep. I like that a bit more for the 49ers. Also, I do think he fits that D Ford replacement a bit better than Kerry Hyder did. So I really like it. Also, Ebukam, younger. You can have him for more years.
And more durable. He's never missed a game in his NFL
Exactly.
career.
Has not missed a game in his career. And that's something, the Niners have struggled with injuries. Unless you've been living under a rock. So it's that simple right there. But yeah, I would take Ebukam over Kerry Hyder. Best of luck to Kerry Hyder. Shout out to him to get his money. I really like what he did there. It could haunt the Niners, could not. I don't know. But overall, I don't think he was ever going to come back. So, yeah. And Hyder versus McGlinchey 2 times a year, that could be an interesting matchup to say the least.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So,
with the free agent signings, there's no player that left that I think is really going to hurt the 49ers. The fanboy in me is really hurt by Kendrick Bourne leaving because he was my favorite player, before I got into the whole media industry and everything. I remember Kendrick Bourne, his first game against the Chiefs in the preseason, where he broke some guy's ankles on the way to a touchdown.
Oh, that was crazy.
And then the very next play, he caught a 2-point conversion and mossed somebody. And I was like, this guy's going to be a player. And it was a great story to follow, to see Kendrick Bourne enter the league as an undrafted free agent, work as hard as he worked to make the 49ers to not get caught, make that initial 53-man roster, not even have to go to the practice squad. And You know, he was inactive for the first stretch of games, but just following along the Kendrick Bourne story and just being that high energy presence and just being beloved by all of his teammates, a fan favorite. You know, I know some people are like, he's posting too many workout videos or whatever. I love Kendrick Bourne, and just, he was 2019. He was great. He was great against the Vikings, made a ton of tough catches in that game, was very dependable, moving the sticks, getting into the end zone. So the KB loss hurts me emotionally, but you look at what the 49ers have been able to do with their wide receivers. They should be able to find someone who can step in, like Brandon Ayuk stepped in for Emmanuel Sanders last year. You know, I'm sure they'll figure it out. So you feel good that the 49ers locked up their highest of priority free agents. And I think you nailed it with Witherspoon. You're onto something there. I'm super high on Ahkello Witherspoon. He's been a very inconsistent football player, and he's in his own head. He's in his own head because the talent is clearly there. And you saw what he was doing against the Cardinals and against the Seahawks when he's getting in DK Metcalf's face and showing him up a little bit, showing that swagger, that edginess, that cockiness. It was like, where did that come from? So I'm concerned about the Witherspoon signing because, of course, he would turn his career around and be the corner everybody saw he could be with the Seahawks.
Yeah, and I think my thing with Ahkello Witherspoon, which I'm worried about, as you said, the inconsistency. I mean, he could be really good with Seattle, and that could be a problem for us. The other thing I'm concerned about, can you name one player that has gotten out of Kyle Shanahan's doghouse besides Ahkello Witherspoon?
No, of course not.
Exactly.
No.
That is
you
cannot. It is so hard to get out of there. And Ahkello Witherspoon did just that, getting in DK Metcalf's face. I mean, Ahkello Witherspoon was a guy who I thought was going to get cut, maybe might get cut at training camp. And instead, he makes it out of Kyle Shanahan's doghouse and gets a deal from Seattle. That definitely scares me because you know how he can work hard. And by the way, he has all the physical attributes. Yes. Again, as you said, Nick, it's just he gets in his own head often. Lack of consistency, lack of confidence. That's his main problem. If he can get out of Kyle Shanahan's doghouse and keep up that confidence, it could be very well. And as Last Second Sports says right here, Jesse says right here, Seattle has great defensive back coaches. Expect that as Ahkello Witherspoon plays well. And I'm totally with him on that. By the way, did a stream last night on Last Second Sports. If you haven't checked that out, go check that out as soon as the stream is done. It was a phenomenal stream. I uploaded stream clips from today. But anyways, yeah, I definitely agree with that statement for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, let's stick with the defensive line right there. Solomon Thomas, he went to the Raiders. I think it was this was a deal that I think it happened like Wednesday or Thursday, something like that. Happened a while ago.
Early on, once the free agency opened up, Solomon Thomas was a quick signing.
Yeah, definitely a quick signing. Personally, I don't care too much. I think Solomon Thomas, yes. I mean, I think the Niners figured out that Solomon Thomas was a bust early on. Number 3 overall pick, definitely did not live up to the hype, which sucks. But I mean, frankly, I don't think it's that big of a loss for the 49ers. He's going to a team in the AFC, so you're not going to see him. You're only going to see him once every 4 years, maybe preseason, considering it's the Raiders. But I mean, I wasn't holding my breath on it. And we got Zach Kerr. We brought back Jordan Willis, who made a pivotal part. I think we got him actually right when Solomon Thomas went down. Or it was somewhere around that time.
It was shortly after.
Mm-hmm. It was shortly after. After Bosa Thomas went down. And again, speaking of that, he's coming off an ACL injury, and it was worse than Nick Bosa's apparently. Or was it? I forget which.
I don't. But
it was something like that. They were similar, but coming off an ACL injury, I think I like what we did instead, bring him back. But best of luck to Solomon Thomas in Las Vegas. I mean, I hope he can revive his career. But for the Niners at this point, it did make sense, and I don't really have much else to say about that.
Yeah, no, me neither. Just wish Solomon Thomas the best. He's a guy that's had to go through a lot in life with his sister passing, and he's a great human being. That's why I've always felt about Solomon Thomas. And you pull for people in life in general, people like Solomon Thomas, just good people with good intentions who have a cause and they try to advance their mission. And I really hope that Solomon Thomas's career works out for him. I truly do.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing but the best to him, but it wasn't going to work out for the 49ers. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, last 2 guys that I want to talk about, and we can talk about if we have time, we can talk about Kendrick Bourne. We talked about Witherspoon a little bit, but Kendrick Bourne, we can talk about a bit more as well. CJ Beathard, Tevin Coleman. But I mean, we'll start with, those are 2 guys. I'll kind of combine them together just for me. I didn't think we were going to bring any of those guys back. Beathard makes a bit more of a difference because you could have had him in the backup role. he's not going to be in the backup role. Obviously, now he's gone. But, I mean, I'm glad for him to get a deal from Jacksonville. That's all I got to say about Beathard. And Tevin Coleman, I really do not care about. I never thought we were going to bring him back. Kyle Shanahan can work with any running back he wants, as I love to say every stream. So Tevin Coleman was a guy who was brought in for, I mean, I forget, brought in 2019, did decent with us in 2019, 2020, didn't do as well. But yeah, I mean, best of luck to those two guys. One's in Jacksonville, one's in New York. Hopefully, I mean, I don't think it really mattered for the 49ers. That's all I got to say about that. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll start with Coleman. And I remember I tweeted this out maybe week 1 or week 2. So we had that game against the Panthers in 2019 where he had 105 yards on 11 carries and scored 4 touchdowns in the game.
Yeah, I know. It was crazy.
And since that game, and this was the remainder of the 2019 season, the playoff, and then the early weeks of 2020, he carried the ball 117 times for 386 yards and 3.3 yards per carry. That 3.3 yards per carry ended up being, oh my, the 3.3 number was already bad enough. And then he just progressively got, it was funny because it got comical. Like I genuinely started laughing. Like I would laugh when he'd enter the game because he would really get blown up behind the line of scrimmage. And it was just unfortunate. And it was the Monday night game against the Bills. And I think he came in for 1 carry and it might've been McGlinchey or another offensive lineman that blew the block. And it's just like, okay, I understand that it's not your fault. You're losing all this yardage literally every single time you get a touch, but it's just funny that the moment you step on the football field, the moment you come on the football field, either someone misses a block or you don't see the hole or whatever the case may be. But he had his moments. I really liked the signing in the 2019 offseason going into that 2019 season. I liked Tevin Coleman. I had him in a couple fantasy leagues when he was with the Falcons, and whenever Devontae Freeman went down, he was a quality guy.
He was decent. He was good with Atlanta. So
I like, and he had a good game against the Vikings, if I remember correctly, before he popped off.
Yeah, him and Mostert did a pretty good job. It was Breida that kind of struggled that game, but I want to bring up that Buffalo game real quick. I'll let you finish, but I mean,
no, that's all I gotta say.
He had something like negative 10 yards that game, or something. It was something ridiculous, and I mean, yeah, I was kind of laughing because I mean, after that, I mean, I think he had like he was just losing yards before that. And then the Buffalo game just lost so many yards. It was ridiculous. Kind of like that Reggie Bush situation where he finished this year with negative yards. Obviously Coleman did it, but I mean, it seemed like that way. So yeah, for sure.
But CJ Beathard, CJ Beathard, another guy very similarly to Solomon Thomas, had a lot of tragic stuff happen to him, especially during his time with the 49ers with his brother passing, his brutal, like just a terrible situation all across the board.
Murder.
So, oh my God. Yeah. Just, I'm getting chills right now just talking about it. It's terrible, and CJ Beathard is another guy that you just pull for, and we'll see what the Jacksonville does with him. I'm sure it'll be in a backup role. They have the first overall pick. It's pretty safe to assume that Trevor Lawrence will go there. Maybe they shake up the draft world and go Zach Wilson first overall. Regardless, there's going to be a very good prospect making their way to Jacksonville in the next 4 to 5 weeks. But I think Beathard, he's a quality backup, and good for him. He really made the most of his opportunities. He's one of those guys that really leaves it out all on the field. When you go back to that Eagles game and when Nick Mullins just pissed the game away in the fourth quarter and he came in, and even though it was during garbage time or however else you feel about it, he put the 49ers in a position to win that game. He really did. And the way that they came back, they had the opportunity to win it. As crazy as it seemed to even be in that position, if Mike McGlinchey doesn't blow back-to-back blocks on that final drive and Beathard doesn't get hit as he throws the football, who knows? Who knows what happens? He completed that Hail Mary pass to Kendrick Bourne against the Cowboys. So who knows? Anyway,
that was him. You're right. For some reason, I thought that was Mullins, but okay, continue.
With what?
Oh no, sorry, you were saying something. I kind of interrupted you. Sorry.
Oh no. Yeah. So it was Beathard, the comeback bid against the Eagles week 4, and then the Kendrick Bourne Hail Mary pass was also CJ Beathard. It was
Beathard.
Yeah. And then you see Kyle Shanahan, CJ Beathard doesn't strike you as being mobile, and yet here's Kyle Shanahan drawing up these read option plays for him, and it's like, okay, the zone read, he's going to keep the ball? Is he going to hand it off? And so it makes you think, can we get a mobile quarterback in here? What are we going to see from Kyle Shanahan? But anyway, best of luck to CJ Beathard. Thank you for your 4 years of service, and wish it could have worked out a little better for you, but he's got a second contract in the NFL. That's something to congratulate him on.
Absolutely, definitely. And you mentioned a good point with putting it all out there. George Kittle said that, I believe it might have been after when his brother was killed, when he wasn't there. He said, like, I just want to shout out to CJ Beathard. He puts it all out there. He said it sometime. So, the locker room respects the hell out of him. And I mean, you see that all the time. And yes, getting that second contract, especially in a Jacksonville team that is rebuilding, I think it's going to work out really great for him as a backup role. So big shout out to him for that. So yeah. All right. I know you gotta get rolling, but we finished all the guys we brought back. I know you gotta get rolling. So how about you start off with what's next for this team? What are the biggest needs, and what do we have to address in free agency before the draft comes?
Oh my God. Like, this is where I get caught up a little bit, because I finding the quarterback of the future, because this team is not committed to Jimmy Garoppolo long term. Like, let's just have a real conversation about it, regardless of if you think Jimmy Garoppolo is a top 15, top 10 quarterback, if you don't think he's even top 25, whatever your stance is. I truly don't feel like this team is committed to him long term. I don't know how anybody could feel that way. And I think that finding a franchise quarterback, a quarterback that is going to lead your franchise for the next 10 plus years, has to be close atop the priority list, somewhere near number one. And then you look at what the 49ers have been doing with all of these long-term, these short-term deals, these one-year deals, and you see all these players coming back that you weren't necessarily anticipating to come back or expecting to come back. This is the question I keep asking myself. As of today, it just popped in my head today, and I keep asking myself this question in my head all day long for the last 12, 14 hours. Is it more important to find your franchise quarterback in the first round of this year's draft and trade future draft assets, or do you try to get Jimmy Garoppolo back to the Super Bowl and put the best team around him on both sides of the ball as possible? Do you draft for impact and maybe draft a wide receiver or a playmaker that falls to 12 that nobody saw being there? Or do you draft a guy like Micah Parsons to play next to Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, even though three linebackers on base down, they don't really do that anymore, right? You don't really have three linebackers on the field too frequently. But thinking about Micah Parsons, he gets so much praise. People have gone out to say that he might be an all-pro. And Dre Greenlaw is going to do a contract extension in a couple years. Who knows if they want to pay him what he could potentially. He's a really good linebacker. Do you really want to pay linebackers that much money? So maybe Micah Parsons is a guy that interests me, and maybe Dre Greenlaw is included in a trade package for Deshaun Watson after the draft, because I don't think anything's going to happen with Watson until the situation he's currently finding himself in settles a little bit. So that I keep going back and forth. I want that franchise quarterback, but it's like you can't start him this year, so you're going to have Garoppolo, and it's like the Super Bowl window's open right now. And do you do everything in your power to capitalize on that and maybe draft J.C. Horn? I think the most impactful position the 49ers should go after right now, assuming Garoppolo, is getting an edge rusher like Azeez Al-Jallari. I might have butchered that last name right there. But get whatever you got to do to get that 2019 pass rush back to form, and I think the rest of the defense will follow suit. So where the 49ers are going to go, I'm not quite sure. I still prioritize finding that backup quarterback, the franchise quarterback. That's a huge difference, franchise quarterback and backup quarterback. I prioritize getting that franchise quarterback, and or maybe you try to make a play for Deshaun Watson after the draft. But the good thing is that they don't have to go left tackle. They don't have to go cornerback. They could, but they don't have to. And you got to feel really good right now about having options.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have to run right now? Or
no, I'm good. I'm here to hear you out.
All right, perfect. So yeah, let's talk about the quarterback a little bit. In my opinion, obviously quarterback's the biggest need for this team. I've said it multiple times. Kyle Shanahan does not trust Jimmy Garoppolo. That's why we need Jimmy Garoppolo out. If I'm looking at right now, I would figure out what you're going to do at the backup position. Are you going to get a rookie for your backup, or are you going to get that veteran guy? Because if in my opinion, if you're going to draft a quarterback in the first round to come in and try to lead this team to a Super Bowl in your rookie year, you need that bridge quarterback. Maybe it's by keeping Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe it's by getting a guy like Alex Smith, trading for Darnold, trading for Bridgewater. I would prefer not to trade anymore, even though I was all on the Darnold train. I'm off that now. Hopefully you guys saw my major announcement video. But yeah, I definitely think it's definitely interesting. Are you going to build around Garoppolo, or are you going to get a rookie right now, as Nick said right there? So I definitely think you're going to see that within the next week. If the team's going to add more depth around quarterback and avoid the quarterback position, they're sticking with Jimmy Garoppolo. And maybe you'll get a guy like Kyle Trask, Kellen Mond, Jamie Newman, or something like that. Some guys that need a bit more development before they can be starters. Or you could get a rookie now, maybe get it, or trade for Deshaun Watson. Personally, I would go Fields, Lance, or Watson, one of those three guys. You have to wait for the Watson situation to play out. But Micah Parsons, that's an interesting one. I didn't really think about that. But you're right. I definitely think we would have to trade a linebacker to get Deshaun Watson. They need defensive help. They lost Bernardrick McKinney. They're one of their best defensive players on the team. I would think they would want Warner, who is in a contract year, and I think the Niners would be more willing to give him up because you have Dre Greenlaw. And then you bring in a guy like Micah Parsons, who could really fill in that role really well, the Fred Warner role. I also think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame could fill in that role as well. That's a guy who seems a bit more reasonable at 12. Because right now, I don't think Micah Parsons is going to get past Denver. I think Denver makes a lot of sense for him at this point. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But that's a good point. And as to the defensive line depth, I definitely think, in the draft, I think you're going to have to figure out the quarterback situation. I don't know if Ojulari is going to be great fit for the 49ers. I don't know if it's going to be reasonable for us to get him because you got the cornerback, you got quarterback still. I think you could look round 4, round 3, somewhere around there. There's some guys round 2 as well that I've heard of really great things about. So that could be a great place to do that. But again, you did get Kerr, you did get Ebukam, but you still lost Hyder, Blair, and Solomon Thomas. Maybe adding one more veteran to this defensive line in free agency would be a good idea. So I'm definitely with you on that. And the last thing I wanted to bring up, cornerback depth. You still don't have you lost Witherspoon. You still don't know what's up with Sherman. I do think you need a cornerback depth a little bit. You have Barrett, you have Mosley, Williams. That it. And Tim Harris, who may not even be on this roster.
Yeah, there was the guy that the team picked up from the Texans waivers, I want to say. I'm blanking on his name right now. But that was
I have no clue who you're talking about. But yeah, he might not even make the roster as well. But and the one reason why I do want this cornerback depth, look at the cornerbacks available. I'm just going to name 5 that may fit this team really quickly. AJ Boye, Malcolm Butler, Steve Nelson, Brian Poole, Garyon Conley. Those are 5 that could fit this team. Maybe could start, maybe could back up Mosley. I don't really know. But there's so many cornerbacks out there. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, that's all I got to say about cornerback depth. Do you have anything else you want to add on to that or any other need you want to talk about?
No, I think we took care of everything.
Perfect. All right. Well, Nick, I know you have to head out. Thank you so much for coming on. I really had a great time with you. Guys, make sure to follow Nick on Twitter. Yeah, Nick, make sure to follow Nick on Twitter at NinerNick22. Check out the Faithful Fanatic Pod. Is this available wherever you get your podcast? Spotify, Apple Premium, Apple Music. Perfect. But guys, that's going to do it for this stream. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Go Niners.